Oh, please.
Looking forward to the election discussions. How did everyone think elections went?
My lips are sealed.
It was pretty quiet in Chaguanas, actually.
Frank, you like that?
And when there wasn't really a line to say, like, you know, people seem to be getting in and out pretty quickly. And
But we had our election in Canada on the same day, you know, so.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I followed both. From
Hi,
when I
Arlene.
heard the results in Trinidad, then I went up to Canada and via BBC and CNN. And so I followed both. Yeah.
I didn't follow any, even though I'm a Canadian citizen. Anyway, I don't like politics. So
Usually I don't, and I didn't write anything for today. And then last minute I did when I saw the map of all yellow, you know, pretty well.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought
Then
that
I
was
got a
it.
little brainwave.
Yeah.
But I made it comic.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start. 1 minute. Hi, good afternoon. It is the 4th of May, 2025. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. This is our meeting solely for open mic and discussion. Our theme for today would be elections, and we're looking forward to Mutilal with kicking us off with The Witness. Mutilal, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Gusha. How are you hearing me?
We're hearing you clear, and we're seeing you as well.
Okay, I didn't have I had an election piece, but I've already posted that on Facebook last week, so I don't want to repeat it. So I will do something else today, called The Witness. I have lived on this spot all my life, and I've seen and heard many things. I have witnessed drownings, rape, murder, domestic violence, stealing, suicide, fights, vehicle accidents, weddings, breakups, political meetings, and funerals, and have watched people in my surroundings grow to become successes and failures. Some incidents stand out more than others, and the more tragic ones are often the ones I remember most. One of my earliest memories is the drowning of Dako and Jasu in the Itwaria River. I can still see two bundles of grass floating rapidly down the swollen river as Dako and Jasu, arms flailing helplessly, bobbing up and down until they disappear. Some say they were lovers, while others maintain that they were just neighbors who tried to cross the river as a shortcut to their homes after cutting their bundles of grass. I have seen and heard the great Eric Williams speak. That time was 1961 and ahead of general elections that year. The PNM held one of their meetings in front of Ashok Shop in the heart of opposition territory. Locals armed themselves with rotten eggs, which they threw at the speakers on top of the makeshift stage of two truck trays. Police baton rained on the miscreants, and a lot of Innocent people got bust heads. The meeting ended early, and police appeals for witnesses went unanswered. Sipol did odd jobs in the village and caught cascadoo in the lagoon, which he stringed and sold on Suchitra's Junction. He was thought to be harmless by the villagers until one day he grabbed a schoolgirl attending the Pinal government school and pulled her under the bridge. I watched as he molested her. The teachers reported the incident, but the parents did not pursue the case because they thought the scandal would affect the child's future. However, he did not go unpunished, as the young men in the village gave him a severe beating with licks in his pubic area that made it impossible for him to ever repeat his act. Everyone in the village knew that Long-Eye Ashok had designs on his sister-in-law Lorna, who was helping out in the shop. Lorna didn't seem to mind, as she played him for a fool. Driving instructor Haridat, who had his office in the shop yard, enjoyed free drinks and sandwiches from Lorna. Folks laughed when Lorna ran over with Haridat, taking with her the bag of money that Ashok kept at the home because he didn't trust the banks. Chumlum was an enormous woman who sold press and snowball at the Pinal government school. She practically lived in the schoolyard, her house being on the eastern side of the school. Her husband was a thin, wiry man who we call Fly because of his size. Fly liked his drink, and I regularly saw Fly at the receiving end of Chumlum's hand when he came home drunk. Whether he was beaten with the Bilna or Chumlum's heavy hands, I noticed that they always end up in an embrace after each beating. Kisun had his shop just before Chumlum's house. He earlier was in a partnership with his brother Jags, a building away. After a dispute, he built his own shop. Soon all the villagers were buying from Kisun, and Jags was in peril of losing his business. I saw everything the night Kisun was killed. His nephew, Jagson, in the company of Horse and Rohan, entered the house. Horse struck Kisun on the head with a piece of iron, while the other two took all the money from the drawer. When they were arrested, the nephew, whose brother was a policeman, became a state witness, and Horse and Rohan went to the gallows. I used to smile when I saw Nagin drop Pearl to work at the Pinal Government School. Pearl, a teacher, lived in San Fernando, and Nagin, a taxi driver, worked the Pinal San Fernando route. All the world love young lovers. However, I was angry when I heard that Nagin was married. Pearl's father was also angry. I remember when Pearl's father came to the school and beat his daughter. Years later, Nagin got a divorce and he and Pearl were married. The bridge across the Etwaria River had a walk on the eastern side, but people still cross on the road on the western side. It was dusk dark when Sankar's two daughters, 7 and 8, has just bought something from Ashok's shop, and Yakub was speeding on the SS Erin Road and bounced them down. He did not stop, but a passerby got his number. Both girls died. Jacob said he did not see them because it was too dark and he was not speeding. But I saw he was going very fast. He got away, and some said it was because he was a relative to a high ranking judge. Mr. McLean was the principal of the Pinal Government School for many years. He was a drinker and spent many evenings with the village men in Ashok shop. Sometimes he would be stale booze when he came to work. Several times during the day, I would see him going across the road by Ashok for what he called a sharp single. A sharp single is a drink of puncheon rum with a cold drink of water. McLean would then put a dynamite in his mouth and return to work. Coca and Boney were cousins and best friends, except when they played cricket. You see, they played for different teams. Coca for up the road, Boney for down the road. After the matches, which were usually played at the Bakal Recreation Ground, both teams retired to Ashok shop where they had drinks and verbally replayed the game. And then the argument started, with Coca and Boney becoming strident. One evening, this led to a fight outside the shop. Coca pushed Boney and he fell and hit his head on the concrete and died. I witnessed the event. It was an accident. However, Boney relatives insisted it was murder and told the police about Coca threatening to kill Boney at an earlier time. Coca was arrested, but later freed when the other cricketers gave evidence in the case. You may wonder why, after witnessing all these events, I did not go to the police and tell them what I saw. Well, you see, I cannot. You see, I am the tall mango tree in the Pinal Government Schoolyard opposite Ashok Shop. Thank you.
A lot of history there of my hometown too, there, Motilal.
Yes, yes. You see, I see mango tree in the Pinal Government Schoolyard, so I see everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the end. Any other comments?
Yes, I mean, I love the fact that Mutila, that you wrote those stories from the point of view of the mango tree, which is so wonderful. And as I was listening to each one of those stories, it was like if each one can be its own story, like if you decided to do a collection of stories that you can have, I mean, it's wonderful. But I mean, the fact that I just recently did a piece on from the point of view of my hands. And so, I mean, I love it. I mean, that's so great. So creative. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like that idea of expanding on each one and making it a short story.
Yes, well, I have something to work on.
All right. Any other comments? If not, we're going to move on to Heather.
Well, as I
Okay.
was saying earlier, I'm not political, but I was kind of blown away when I saw the map of Trinidad, mostly yellow, a little few touches of red, and all of Tobago is blue. So even though I don't really know what parties those necessarily what they stand for, I kind of did up a little something. It's called a sign. Two vagrants sit down on a bench around the savannah in Port of Spain. Boy, you say, is the election day today, boy, you voting? Doogie answer, who me? What the use? You think my vote going to make any difference in my life? It'll go feed me, give me medicine when I sick, put a roof on my head when it's raining? Man, you're joking. You know what they say? Voting is a right and a privilege, Boyo said, as if he was trying to convince himself against Doogie's argument, which had more than a ring of truth to it. Man, is a waste of time, we. Everybody talking about crime in we country. But it's them politician and them who's the biggest thief of all. It ain't matter if it red, yellow, or blue party. How they go solve crime when they solve criminal? Doogie said. Look, I just have to fear for my life every night when I trying to sleep anywhere. and Crook and them looking to beat me up and take my small change I saving for food in the morning. He continued. You're right, said Boyo, nodding his head in agreement, as he himself had been robbed of his pittance often enough, a few times even getting licks for so. What you think will happen if nobody vote? Asked Doogie. And what color that party is, the no vote party? White? You know what they say? Not voting is a vote. It means you ain't like either candidate, and a no vote is your choice, said Boyo. Frankly, I would like to see that. It go serve them politician and them right. Suppose we wake up in the morning and everything white. Man, that is happening foreign. Yeah, but there's snow. We ain't have that here, Doogie said. Yeah, but we have snow job though. You know, snow does cover up all the rot and nastiness under a pretty white blanket. I see that for myself when I was a migrant picking apple in Canada and we get early snowfall. Man, things are any better there, you know, is modern day slavery self. You could imagine Whitey growing apple, but they're too good to pick it for themselves. Black people still have to do for them. Boy, you at it. Eh, man, but you're well smart. If nobody vote government at a standstill, maybe them politicians go work harder to give the people what they want, said Doogie. But mark my words, it's never about the people. It's usually about them own power. All of them is big shot. They just start out humble and get proud. One set a mama guy with them. Oyo and Doogie passed the bottle of rum between them, taking turns at a swig. They had pooled their pittance together to buy a bottle. The evening sun was warm, but the breeze around the savannah was stiff. The two vagrants took in the sights and sound of Port of Spain at dusk. The hum of the traffic, an occasional horn blaring, vendors calling out their offerings, the birds chirping, and the breeze running through the trees overhead. The evening was heavenly. Before they know it, it get dark quick. Between them, they finish off the bottle and pass out to the sounds of a steel band practicing in a panyard somewhere in the background. Soon they were snoring loudly, passers-by laughing, commenting on them two fellas sawing logs. Fast becoming the city that never sleeps, night sounds in Port of Spain filled the air. The Kiwasi clock bunging out the hours, the lions roaring in Emperor Valley Zoo, and lovers walking by quarreling far into the wee hours. As dawn broke with its pink light peeping out over the Laventille hills across the savannah, Boyo stirred. He blinked a few times and woke Doggy. Look, he gasped. Yellow wind. All around me is yellow. The yellow pui trees that they were under had shed their blossoms overnight in the stiff breeze. It was blanketing the savannah as far as the eye could see, covering them. It looked almost like the whole island yellow this morning, eh? Boyo exclaimed. Yes, it's a sign, Doogie mumbled. A change coming. We could only hope, boy. Hope, said Boyo. And with that, the two vagrants went off to find food. The end.
Thanks, Heather. I noticed trees came up in this one as well, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was
Any
very clever.
comments?
Lovely.
This time is poetry.
Any comments? Cynthia, you were saying something.
No, I was just saying it was lovely to interweave the pui into the whole theme. It was very, very clever of you, Heather.
Well, you know, it just so happened that the election is pui time.
True.
And you know, we have yellow pui and yellow island.
But your dialogue, Heather, I mean, you are so right on point with your dialogue with those two characters, like, you know, everyday man, an everyday man, right on that, you know, talking about that stuff. And it's wonderful. It really is. I love it. Thanks.
Well, you know, the thing is, when we came to Canada in 1970, it's almost 50 years now, you know. Mommy was the only one that didn't go out and work among the Canadian people. She retained her dialogue much longer than we did. And she had all these cute sayings and stuff that we had forgotten about. Um, Dad was out working in the public, and of course, as kids at university and doing summer jobs and things, we kind of lost it. But every once in a while, we still marvel. Mom lived to 102, so we had her a long time. So she used to come up with some of these little sayings, you know. And after a while, we kind of wrote them down. So I have this little thing to
It isn't the same thing as being in church.
yeah, to take examples of, yeah. But you know, 50 years in Canada, I still remember a lot.
So that will be behaving back to her.
Yeah, that's a great example of showing rather than telling, because I can see those two fellas on the park bench with their little bottle of rum and so on. It's very well done.
And it's amazing how the common man usually has it on point, you know. It's, you know, they're not hiding behind all the jargon. They can cut right through to the issues at hand. And then of course, you know, like they're thinking, are the politicians really going to think about the common man like us? You know, we're still going to have to get up next morning and go looking for food.
Mhm.
You know, Heather, 50 years and you're still singing as if you live in Pinal.
You can't take the penal out of the gear. Well, I could tell you.
You know, yes, I like the idea that, you know, if nobody didn't vote.
Well, that was Gersha's idea. That was her prompt. You know,
Yes,
just yeah. So I kind of worked that in as well.
And actually, the amount of people that voted went down
Oh,
this
really?
year. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so there were a lot of no votes.
Mhm.
There was a lot of no votes for the PNM. A lot of people didn't come out.
Mm.
You know, yesterday I was at the Boca Slit Festival, and one of our members, Vishnu Hussain, um, he was among what they call emerging authors for 2024. He was there, so I went to give him a little support.
That was nice. How was Bocas yesterday? Was it well attended?
Yes, it was. It was. But sometimes, you know, you always find I have a little problem with the organizing
Mhm.
because I was scheduled to read on the stand up and deliver,
Mhm.
but about three people before me went beyond their time, so
Okay.
that by the time my turn came, they were closing, so I didn't read.
Oh, okay. No, no. All right.
But
Well,
no problem. I've been reading for a lot of over the years, many times, except for during COVID.
that's true. That's true. You've read quite a bit for Bocas. Um, I'm not seeing Althea here today. Another major thing that happened is the passing of the Pope. And so we have Cynthia next, and she will be reading my thoughts on the passing of the Pope Francis and the response of a devout Catholic to my thoughts. Cynthia, 1 minute. I
Right,
just want to
thank you,
get you
Lisa.
on.
On the morning of the Pope's passing, I got the news very early and I remained looking at BBC World and just, of course, I cried. I cry all the time. I cry when it's lovely music. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm happy. And then maybe a couple hours later, I just thought, well, let me jot down what comes to my mind. So this is what resulted. My thoughts on the passing of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, in Rome early this morning. The overarching influence of the Roman Catholic Church on my life. While I was baptized a Methodist, the first school I attended was the St. Joseph's Convent, Castries, St. Lucia. For Jenilyn, who is interested in having heard only today that I was born in British Guiana or Guyana. When we left Guyana, I was 7 months old, and then the church transferred my father to Tobago. So we came back to Trinidad in an amphibian, a little seaplane. I was 7 months old, and we went to Tobago, and we were there for a few years, and then Daddy was transferred to St. Lucia. So this is how I attended the St. Joseph's Convent, Castries, St. Lucia. That was my first school. I was about 6 years old. I started to learn the catechism along with the rest of my class. Then the nuns realized that I was not Roman Catholic and debarred me from learning it. I distinctly recall that I was sorry. My father started life as a Roman Catholic in Cedros and Dicacus, South Trinidad, but was attracted to the Methodist Wesley Guild and joined the Methodist Church, later to be sent to train for the ministry, the Methodist ministry, at Canewood College in Jamaica. This college subsequently became Union Theological College, which is still attached to UWI Mona. Back in Port of Spain, Trinidad, I attended the prep of St. Joseph's Convent as a little girl of 7. There was a prep in those days. Then Daddy was transferred to San Fernando. So I attended St. Joseph's Convent, Harris Promenade, San Fernando. The convent was opposite to my home and very near to the Methodist Church and Mission House, so it was also convenient. One year, the procession for Our Lady of Fatima passed right outside our house. I still remember the occasion and the singing of Our Lady of Fatima, hail, etc. Later, we came back to Port of Spain, and then Daddy was transferred to Barbados. So later I attended other schools predominantly oriented to the Church of England. But fast forward now to my marriage in 1968. I had come back to Trinidad in 1967, and not only was I marrying a Roman Catholic, but I was not employed at the time, and my husband-to-be was engaged as a teacher by the Catholic Board at St. Joseph's College, St. Joseph. In those days, that college had just been founded, and Father Francois de Bataille and my husband, Ernest Birch, were the only two teachers at that time. So at that time, it was just boys. So when we were going to be married, I had to marry in the Roman Catholic Church. I therefore insisted on choosing which church. So we were married at the Church of the Assumption in Maraval. What was most interesting was that the two priests officiating invited my father to read the epistle, since Daddy was an ordained minister of the Methodist Church. I have a precious photo of this, with Daddy in the center reading the epistle and the Roman Catholic priests, one on either side of him. By inclination, I am ecumenical in outlook. It's not surprising, since my father started as one thing, ended up as another, and we were always broad-minded about religion. So my focus has always been on the life one lives, not on what religion or denomination one espouses. I also had the opportunity to teach comparative religion at high school, in addition to regular scripture classes. I have always deemed it a most important part of my teaching, since I live in a multi-religious and multicultural country. While the dream of peace among nations seems remote, I could not help thinking, this morning, of how critical this way of thinking is to the aim of universality and world peace. So those are my thoughts on the morning of Monday, 21st April 2025. I sent this piece to a few persons. I sent it to Krishna and a few other persons, Heather, I believe. And I sent it to a friend who is in Port of Spain. I'm friendly really with her brother. But she doesn't know very much about me. She knows I taught at Bishop's, and that's probably all that she knows. But when she read it, she sent me her thoughts. So I figured I could let you hear what she thought of it. So Peggy Ann Lee on my bit of writing about the passing of Pope Francis. Peggy says, I thank you first for capturing your deep thoughts and reflection on paper, and second for sharing them with me. You wrote with great sincerity, appreciative of those experiences which have profoundly influenced your life. It is interesting the perspective you presented as you documented the events as well as the myriad changes in location you experienced growing up. Yet one thing remained constant, the presence of the church in your life. You recognized and acknowledged this influence. There is that joy too in the feeling of how grateful you are for these experiences which have kept you steady. You have honestly stated also your understanding and personal views of the ways harmonious living can become a reality. Your reflection is very captivating. It is amazing that these thoughts so easily rolled onto paper. You were inspired, you wrote. Amazing, emotional too, history too, genuine. I think you must have felt happy that you recorded your thoughts. Thank you, Peggy Ann Lee, April 2025. So, those are the pieces I wanted to share.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any
Most welcome.
comments?
You did send me that piece, Cynthia, and I thought it was lovely. It kind of follows the way that I was brought up in Trinidad too, because even though we came from a Hindu background, we were part of the Canadian mission, the Presbyterian Canadian mission. And then I went to Bishop's, which was Anglican, and then Holy Name, which was Catholic. So I'm like you. I feel I have that ecumenical view, and that's why I always liked uh the Pope that was before this one, the from Poland. Was it John the 23rd? I can't remember his name, his Polish name. Pardon? Yeah, so yeah, so I really, that's right. I really enjoyed your piece.
Thank you.
It was
Thanks,
good
Cynthia.
to learn about your background as well. And, moving from country to country under these circumstances is quite interesting. And I think well, I tell people it builds character. The more you move, the more you learn to assimilate in different societies. And well, as a small child, that would have been probably easier than moving as an adult. I'm not sure, but interesting to learn about your early life.
That's a good point. I think it was, when you move around and traveling is not just getting on a plane and going somewhere to a hotel. Traveling is going to another place and finding out what you can learn from those people.
Yeah.
And it's an education in itself that in many cases, the nuances, you can't learn that from a book.
Yeah.
And it broadens your mind. I think it was, Mark Twain said, travel is fatal to prejudice. And that says a lot.
Mhm.
I believe so is college. Because when you go off to college, you get, even if you've been in a small bubble, you get bombarded by so many different
Oh, yeah.
experiences.
In
But,
fact, that's why it's preferential to if you're getting multiple degrees, to have one degree from one university and another degree from a completely different institution.
I did that.
Yeah.
3 different schools. So it's interesting too, the questions that people ask you in each location, like where is Trinidad and Tobago? Where you find yourself educating people who have absolutely no idea where you come from, the language, the people who live there. It's
True.
constant. Like, anyway.
Yeah, I came to Canada way back in 1963 and went to Saskatchewan. In those days, there were no non-white people, and well, I think there was about 10 or 12 in Regina in Saskatchewan. And some people would ask, meant well, but they would ask questions like, do we have houses down there? And people wear grass skirts and so on?
Yes.
And
I got the grass skirt question too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was just young. I was about 16 years old, and in a very angry sort of way, one fella asked me about something like that. Do we swing on vines? And I said, well, actually, when I came to Toronto, the immigration officer took a scissors and cut my tail off, to conform to the rest of society.
Good answer.
He didn't know if I was joking or what.
But well, some of the ignorance, I still think it continues to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So I studied at McGill, first degree. And I remember when it was time for graduation, one of my colleagues, one of my classmates asked, well, what are you going to do now? Go back to your country, that banana republic, and plant bananas. I couldn't believe it. But
my experience has been the education that we got at Bishop's was so complete, I felt, that I kind of walked through university here in small town Canada. I went to a very small university in a small town in New Brunswick.
Okay.
And they really couldn't teach me anything I didn't already know. I didn't really apply myself because it was just like a walk through the park,
Yeah.
I could have applied myself better now in retrospect, but anyway, it's said and done. I did achieve my my degree, but yeah, it has remained that with that small town attitude to this day, and that's where I got all these awful questions. And we're having our 50th reunion this spring, so they put up a Facebook site, but there's still those inane questions and still wanting to play the old games. And I was the one that said, can we, when you're showcasing everybody on this Facebook page, can we have some of the international students represented? And like nobody thought of it. And I'm thinking, well, they came to university too. They were part of the whole student body. And, so why not have them represented as well? So, we got some feeble little efforts, but yeah, you kind of have to poke them to make them realize that they're not the only people in the world.
And Mrs. Birch, are you in touch with anybody from childhood? Because you mentioned Barbados. And
actually, would you believe that June Allen Miller I knew in Barbados when I was a teenager?
Oh.
She was active in the church, and my father was a Methodist minister.
Okay.
Another circuit, but in the same Methodist church.
Okay.
And in recent years, now I'm sort of looking around for things to do in a way. I ended up joining a Bible study group, and lo and behold, there's June. And what is even more interesting is that June's late husband, long before he was married, was in the area that my father was stationed at, Ebenezer Philip. And Mr. Miller, you see Miller at the end of her name, Mr. Miller then was a teacher, and he started me in Latin. Isn't that something? So I may have been about, I don't know if I was 15 or thereabouts. So June is actually somebody who goes back with me forever.
Way back. That's
And
wonderful.
there are others. There are others. One
Wow.
school friend from Barbados looked for me for 53 years. She was looking on Facebook. I was not on Facebook. Eventually, she caught up with me. But she had been at St. Michael's in Barbados with me, had left to marry an African, well, you know, they have a lot of princes and whatever.
Yeah.
He was in the diplomatic corps. I only learned this maybe about 5 years ago when she found me. She disappeared, got married, she went her way, I went my way, and 50 something years. She said, Cynthia, I tried to find you for 50 something years.
Wow.
But unfortunately, over the last few years, she's gone into dementia. I'm not even too sure now if she's still alive. But that's another one way. I have quite a few friends from long, long ago.
Excellent. Where I live now, nobody has heard of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's quite a task to explain, even on a map, where Trinidad is located. I think in Yucatan, the Caribbean does not feature in anybody's geography class. Nobody knows anything what language we speak. They may know some of the Spanish-speaking Caribbean countries, but that's it. Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, nobody else. So my existence in their minds, it's kind of foggy.
Even when people started going to Jamaica, to England, they would ask, "Which part of Jamaica are you from?" They
Yeah,
thought all of us came from Jamaica. That
one
was
big
the only,
Jamaica, yes.
yeah,
But they
that
don't
was the
even know Jamaica.
only
I don't even, there's a drink called Jamaica, which is what we call sorrel. So
Oh,
when you
okay.
say Jamaica, everybody's confused. There's a country called Jamaica. Yes. Anyway, people are
Yeah,
very polite and friendly, and that's all that matters. It's safe.
that's
So that's
important.
great.
Yeah,
Very polite and friendly.
that's 99% of the journey.
Okay. Welcome, Althea. Althea is here. Hi, Althea. If you can
Yes, good
unmute.
evening.
Good evening. I know you have a
Yes,
few
I'm
pieces
quite
to
late.
share with us. That's okay.
I'm quite
Welcome.
late. I was making dinner and completely forgot that I'm supposed to be reading at 7 my time, 1 your time, or 3 your time. Yeah.
Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. So everyone has read already?
No, we still have myself, we still have Frank and
Oh,
Jenny Lynn.
okay. Okay.
Do you want me to go and then I can call
Yeah.
on you if you're not
No,
ready?
I'll read. I'll read.
Okay.
Well, I live in Switzerland, and I've been living in Switzerland for 34 years now. And so the poem I'm about to read is adjusting to Switzerland and becoming Swiss over time. So it's called I Becoming Swiss. Dear Auntie, thank you for your last letter. Yes, I'm feeling much better. The Linden Bluton tea did the trick for me. Auntie, you know what I notice? I becoming Swiss. I find myself eating raclette and fondue. No more red beans and rice and beef stew. I used to get upset when codfish was hard to get, but now I eating salmon and ham with a slice or two of melon. I drinking wine instead of rum, eating zoff instead of raisin bun. I buying lamb in the shop by gram. Imagine that. And I watching my weight. Don't want to get too fat. I have to watch how I eat chocolate and Basler Leckerli, 'cause too much ain't good for me. Auntie, I buying peaches, not papayas, apples, not guavas, but everybody loves ripe bananas. Auntie, I walking the street not smiling with people I meet. And if strangers come up to me and want to chat friendly, I think they batty, especially if they want to talk about family. It's too personal, you see. I getting irritated when people not on time. Before I never used to mind. I don't call out to my friends in the street because it's not discreet. I stop the children from playing calypso too loud because the neighbor below going pound broomstick on my floor and spit sharp words in my face when she knocked my door. Auntie, when I making recreation, I packing on clothes, not taking them off. Rushing up mountains instead of down to the sea. I snowboarding and skiing, not windsurfing and snorkeling. Dusting snow off my clothes instead of sand. I can still get black or tan, but it don't last long. 2 weeks later, I looking like a white woman. Auntie, I can understand a little Swiss German. Not bad for a woman coming from a tiny island in the Caribbean. So, Auntie, I telling you, I becoming Swiss for true. Okay, the second poem is called Castaway, and it's about, well, anyway, I will read it and you can tell me what you think. Castaway. Brown woman in a red dress lounges under gaze of sun god. Legs stretch across green bench during fickle spring. Her hair is a neglected garden. The locks of a woman who mourns the dead. The locks of a marooned soul, culture-starved, battle-scarred. Is she a lost youth in search of independence? Is she a souvenir of tropical holiday heat? Is she a mail-order bride, a refugee, an escaped domestic slave? I pray sun god does not blink, for she, lost in a sea of pale faces, will drown in the cold. Okay, so that's my two poems that I said I would read.
Wow, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. Any comments?
Yeah.
I know Arlene is clapping as well. I really like the Becoming Swiss.
Okay,
Wow.
thank you.
Yes, profound.
I like it very much too. I like them both, but the first one, you really hit the, got it Bang on right. That's exactly what happens in a big country when you come from an island. Lovely, Althea. Lovely. As usual,
Thank you.
very, very nice, that first one.
Yes, I enjoyed
Uh,
becoming
the
Swiss. It was
yeah, the second poem is about, we have a lot of Swiss men who go to Dominican Republic or they go to Brazil and they bring back women, you know, they marry these women and bring them back. And of course, then you have these big cultural differences where the older Swiss men are very controlling and as a result, you know, these women become mentally lost, you know. And so the poem was inspired by a Black woman that I saw lying on a bench during spring. You could tell that she was mentally disturbed. And that was me trying to interpret what her problem could be. Well, the men bring back wives not only from South America and the Caribbean, but places like the Philippines as well. You'd see these older men with young Filipino or Asian brides, and some of them become more like household servants, you know, and become trapped in a situation that if you can't get out, it could affect you mentally. Yeah.
Thank you, Althea. You know, I particularly like the first poem
Yeah. Well,
because I my had a, I had a younger sister who migrated to England at an early age, and well,
yeah,
she just lived there all the time, and I used to see
yeah,
her struggling. And I used to laugh at her between the what I would call the English culture because she got
yeah,
married to um, a guy from Ireland and
yeah,
Trinidad culture, and especially when I go to stay by her, and we
yeah,
would be conversing, and he'd be looking
yeah,
at us, you know, in a strange way. She used to struggle with it. I used to laugh at her with between what she accustomed doing and what she was accustomed doing back home then.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I could really understand that, could relate to that. Thank you.
Althea, I mean, I love both poems. What I'm curious about the first one, did you use the letter as a way of writing that poem, or was that a real letter that you were writing to your auntie, or
No,
as part of the craft?
I read a poem by a Trinidadian poet.
Mm.
I don't know if it's there's this famous Trinidadian, I
Paul
mean
Keynes
Jamaican
Douglas?
poet.
Or
Excuse me?
is it Paul Keynes Douglas or is it Louise Bennett?
No, it was a woman. It was a
Louise
woman, and
Bennett,
she reads
Jamaica.
poems in Jamaican dialect.
I think it's Louise Bennett.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think she had a poem written in the form of a letter, and that was the inspiration for me writing a Dear Auntie. So that was the inspiration for it, and it was published in a Swiss anthology, an anthology where non-Swiss people contributed to this anthology and wrote about their experiences here in Switzerland. So that was my take on my experience. Yeah.
It works really well. It's
Thank you.
very good. Yeah. Thanks.
Any of the comments?
I was interested to learn about, in the second piece, the older Swiss men bringing back people from hot countries to Switzerland, because I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about that, you know. Well, see, I've been to Thailand and I saw old British and other European men picking up Thai
Yeah.
women now,
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
you know, temporarily or taking them back to wherever they were from. So it's interesting to hear
Yeah.
that piece.
And later, it became, they started marrying women from Eastern Europe.
Oh, yes.
That was the next group.
Yes.
I guess closer to their culture, but still women trying to escape financial difficulties,
Yeah.
and they would marry these old Swiss men. Some of them are farmers. They put them on their farm to work,
Wow.
you know, to become pickers and, you know, do hard work, hard labor. Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. That's hard.
Or I think in Canada, you might have mail order brides too, where people order brides from Europe and other countries, and they,
Well,
you
it's
know,
happening a little in Trinidad as well, because when we had a lot of the Venezuelans coming over,
yeah,
we saw men that would take in women, and sometimes they had
yeah,
two women living with them.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's once there's that imbalance of power, you tend to see people being taken advantage of, especially women.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Well, Grisha, you know, down in my area,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the men leaving their wives for these young
Yeah.
Venezuelan women.
Yeah. I want to jump in. I'm not scheduled to read. Frank is actually scheduled to go next, but I want to jump in with a short poem. It's by Kamta Prasad, and we recently highlighted him at Day Bay Library. Mutilal planned a wonderful event to highlight his pieces. And there were so many people there. There was song, there was poetry, there were speeches. I didn't get to read because I was running Zoom. But as we're on the topic, I will jump in and read a piece that I was supposed to read. It's okay, hold on. It's called New Neighbors. Leaning out of my back door into the night, I heard the Spanish music, Spanish speech, a child crying, sound of children crying anywhere, any place, tears are tears, no matter where shed. The sound of my new neighbors from Venezuela in broad daylight, punching man intoxicated, hormones mixed with alcohol become Frankenstein, arms outstretched. He chased the fair-skinned girl around the bar. Loco, 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 she screamed, then disappeared. In broad daylight, another night, young man rebuffed, burned fair skin with cigarettes, skin intentionally exposed. Later, he was found, blood pouring from mouth to ground, blood spilled by local males. Spanish music, Spanish speech, concealed red light activities, dances in the night. Any old music will do. Local males responded. One so enthralled committed bigamy. His hapless parents could not comprehend, cursed the wife, but not the boy. A drive-by shooting, sound of women screaming. My new neighbors from Trinidad, next to the bones of the Banwari man, rotting bones could harm no one. And well, not recently, today, actually, I went outside to do laundry and I realized there's somewhere on my street, I don't know where, it's not next to my house, but it's close enough that I can hear. I believe there's a Spanish church that just opened because I heard it's all in Spanish, so I had no idea what was being said. But I guess I could just decipher. It sounded like a church service with people singing and stuff like that. So, you know, they are really creating lives in
Yeah.
our country. And, you know, I hope with that also comes the other elements that no one wants, but, you know, it's a part of migration, I guess.
So, yeah, is that a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago? Large groups of Venezuelans coming in
Yeah,
legally or illegally?
both, yeah. We had a
Okay.
large group of illegal Venezuelans coming in, and then they decided we couldn't send them back. We got a little bit of backlash from the international community, which is ironic, especially what happened in the US after that we were being inhumane in terms of sending them back. And
Yeah.
we couldn't handle the amount that was coming in. The US and other places actually sent funds to nonprofit agencies, was a big thing in the newspaper, to help with all these new immigrants that was coming in. And then the government made a decision not to legalize them, but to give them work permits, I guess. So they're allowed to work, and businesses were encouraged that to hire them, because if they hire them, I think they don't have to pay NIS for them. They're not a part of the NIS.
Okay.
Well, our NIS is like healthcare and stuff. So they're not necessarily a part of that as yet. Now, someone could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm saying all of this from memory. But where we're at now is that we still have a large population of Venezuelans here. And now I guess someone in charge will have to decide going forward how we will handle it. Are we just going to fully integrate them, you know, or not? But
I
after
think
seeing how it was handled in the US, where there's now sending them back, it's quite ironic that we got so much backlash because they were coming in every day by boat, and our borders are not necessarily, you know, the manpower to watch every cove.
Yeah.
We just don't have it.
Yeah, Gusha, I think one of the reasons they were being employed is because they were usually given lower wages.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the construction areas and like that. They were paid lower wages.
Yeah.
So that if you go on a construction site, you only hear amigo, amigo, and loco, and things like that.
And then, but then that brings to question. I mean, is that fair? You know, is it fair for the local who's now being devalued? And is it fair for the immigrant that you're doing the same work and you're not being paid a livable wage? And a lot of landlords took advantage as well, because they would have a lot of them living in, you know, small apartments and things like that. But in order for them to afford the rent, they can't, because they're not being paid the same. They can't necessarily live by themselves, so they have to live together with others. And when you migrate, you tend to want, especially if you're not speaking the same language, you tend to want to stay close to people who are your culture, who will look out for you, who you could relate to, you know? Because remember, they're now starting a life, so their major issue is going to be saving. Maybe they have to send money back home, you know? So I feel like I've seen the exploitation. Like you spoke with the girls being made to work on farms and stuff. You're running somewhere for a better life, and then you get exploited when you get there.
I still question how we've arrived at this. I remember in the 80s visiting Venezuela when I used to live in Trinidad, and it was such a wealthy country, way more wealthy than Trinidad, with resources and infrastructure. And we would go shopping there with our new oil dollars. Everybody was going to Venezuela to shop for shoes and handbags. And how did it get to this?
Well, it's because the economy is in shambles because of
Oh,
the economic pressure from the US. They're not allowed to sell their oil and all that. So from your time to now is migration in reverse. That's another Louise Bennett.
yes, yes,
Mhm.
it's true.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, Matilda, maybe you could read that one for us.
Yeah. I didn't a lot of people from Trinidad and Tobago immigrate to Venezuela
In the past,
sometimes in the 60s
yes, because their
to
economy was weak.
work.
Yes,
Yeah,
because if you look back, I spent about 30 something years in the oil industry, nearly 40
yeah,
years. And
yeah,
our initial expertise came from people who went to Venezuela to work in the oil industry and later
yeah,
on came back to Trinidad. So
Mhm.
yeah.
in there. And one other thing, Gusha, you didn't get to read because you was doing essential work in managing our Zoom. So
Yes,
thank you for that
Mm.
and giving up um your option to read.
not
And
a
it's
problem.
wonderful that you
Not
could
a
Portia, I
do it.
didn't
problem.
get your email. I didn't get your email.
I just resent it. Let me know if you got it.
Okay.
But can I just add some?
Um, okay.
Sure.
There is
No,
also,
I
oh,
was just about to congratulate you on the election of a Trinidadian president and vice president.
No, Trinidad President, Trinidad Prime Minister,
Right. Yeah,
and
we're
leader
a
of the
republic.
opposition.
Prime Minister
Women
and
power.
yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It was lovely to see the democratic process play out because, most elections is very tight. And this election, there was a clear winner. And, we all say, oh, this person think they're a Democrat. They feel, well, a dictator, they feel they can do what they want. But
Mhm.
dictators stay in power. They don't exit. So it was nice to see that we were
Now,
able to do that.
now they have the challenge of standing up to Donald Trump.
I think we have more challenges internally that
Internal,
we
I
would
was
have
thinking
before
that
like
Oh,
dealt
okay.
with first.
standing up to
Yeah,
the people and what the people want
Yeah.
and what's best
yeah,
for the
yeah,
country is quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
And I see a lot of Trump's people doing their part in their democratic process within their processes over there. So
Yosha, I wanted to just go back in terms of talking about Venezuela and what's going on right now, because there is a strong history between Venezuela and Trinidad. I mean, when the early Venezuelans came, I mean, I can talk about my family coming to Trinidad to work in the cocoa estate and develop that. I mean, we have parang. That's part of the Trinidad culture, you know. And so it's sad to see what's going on right now with just migrants all over the world and how they're treated.
yeah, yeah,
And so that's such a problem. And I can talk about here, but I'd rather not even, sometimes you kind of just sort of like bite your tongue. But anyway, I just wanted to point out in terms of just and just the connection of Trinidad and Venezuelans and that whole cocoa pile community, and how to me it's a very important part of Trinidad culture right now. So, and it's sad what's happening with them being in a situation where I mean, also the Chinese. I mean, there was a second wave or third wave of Chinese that has come to Trinidad.
yeah.
Okay, and I mean,
Guyana is the same when the
how
plane
is that
moves to
being
the people.
right? How is that
In
being dealt
Guyana.
with? How is that being dealt
The,
with?
the, the crazy thing about that, and I think it's because they have more structure, is that they came in, I believe, when they were building the Prime Minister's house and Napa. And when those projects were completed, I don't know if they left. I believe the majority of them stayed, or some of them stayed. I can't say the majority because I don't know. Some of them stayed. But I believe the Chinese community has a strong support system in place where you saw them, you saw groups, and there was this big hoopla, and then there was nothing. There was just silence. So I think they got you know,
They
just
take care of their own.
integrated into the current Chinese population. But that's just my thoughts. I'm not sure. I haven't read any articles or anything in the newspaper regarding it.
Yeah, I think they also take care of their own. But yeah, but also I think the idea of that Venezuelans are coming, they're bringing crime and gangs. And I mean, come on, these women are subjected to prostitution. I mean, I don't even live there, and I know that there is a prostitution house in every corner. All right. So, I mean, these women are being taken advantage of. Don't get me started.
But
Okay.
the reason I think the reason for that is, remember, the Venezuelans came different than the Chinese. The Chinese came in as workers. So
Right.
there was some vetting process taking place, and they had that structure. A lot of the Venezuelans came in illegally via boats. So we really, there was no bar of entry.
Right.
And when that bar of entry is not there, you get the work, you get the good, you get the bad, and everything in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but again, for me, it goes back to human rights. Everyone, once we are human and we are earthlings,
Yeah.
we all should have those basic
well,
rights.
yes.
But Arlene, I agree with you. I agree
So-
fully with you. Althea?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it Jenny Ling
Yes.
mentioned that she lives somewhere
Yeah, in
where
in Mexico.
where do you live?
Mérida is the capital of the state of Yucatan in Mexico.
Oh,
So I'm in
wow.
the tropical part of Mexico.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And how
Are you there for work or?
No, not necessarily. I left Canada during the pandemic because for mental health, I had to get out.
Okay.
And I was looking for
Yeah.
a safe place to live. And this part of Mexico, it's very quiet, very safe.
Yeah.
And people are quite welcoming. Of course, more and
Okay.
more Americans and Canadians are moving here now. So I don't know if they'll be patient with us as
Yeah.
4 years ago. But for now, it's a wonderful place to live, and it's family oriented.
Okay.
So I enjoy it here. I feel human, like a human being,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is important, not a number.
What is the election process like?
Yeah. Oh, they had elections. What month was it? I forget. But it is I think they had several political parties to choose from, not just two, which is great. And we have a new female president.
Yeah.
And she got Claudia Sheinbaum. She got a lot of support from poor people, poor working class people, because she promised them a lot. And so I have a few wealthy friends who are not too pleased because they said, oh, she's going to make the country another Venezuela. So a lot of the wealthy friends were not too pleased, but those who were just getting by, they're very excited by the new president. And then we had a new female mayor for Mérida. And Mérida is the capital of Yucatan. So this new mayor is very excited to, again, uplift the poor and the working class. And I see that in some neighborhoods in the south of the city where she's doing paving streets. You know, the south of the city was always neglected because it's working class. And so they put in new bus routes and paving streets and all that. So living up to the electoral promises. So it's quite an exciting time to be here.
Thanks for sharing. I
Yeah.
always feel Trinidad elections, it's like a mini carnival
Okay.
because Mutilal has a piece, I believe, about a maxi driver, that it's you have food and you have music and everything at the political rally. So it's almost like, and they even have performers. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yes,
almost
it's a
like
big carnival.
yeah, it's like a mini carnival. I will move on to Frank because I know we've gotten, of course, we've been chatting, but it's been quite interesting. Thank you to everyone who has shared so far.
Well, the group today is certainly international. We have Mexico, Canada, Switzerland, Trinidad. I mean, and it's interesting, you know, when Motilal was speaking there, I noticed he had a fan in the back of him. So it's probably quite warm and humid, and he has that fan blowing. Meanwhile, I have a little space heater under the table where I'm sitting, blowing hot air on my foot. So
Yeah.
I have a fan blowing
So-
on, you can't see it either, but it's hotter than hell. It's almost 38 degrees today.
so
So,
well, I must say that that you know, I was telling Gush I am just a novice writer because my primary area of expertise does not include poetry and prose and English literature and so on. So I'm here really to learn a lot from the others. And so I'm going to read an excerpt from this book I wrote. I don't know. Can you see that? Yeah, poetry and prose.
Okay.
I mean,
See it
Love
now.
Has Two Moons.
Yes, we see it now.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the reason I preface my thing with the fact that I'm a novice writer is that the short story I'm reading from, the excerpt from this short story is about 3,000 words. So I'm just going to read a short piece. So I'll have to explain most of the story. And it takes place in a mythical Caribbean island, and which still has overtones of the colonial era. And there's a white supremacist who is the main character, and what happened to him. So I might have to jump around from paragraph to paragraph, so just bear with me. So the name of the short story is "Oh My God, I'm Black." My name is Byron McQueen. I'm 22 years old, and 2 days ago, I was a white man. I'm sitting under the shade of a gigantic mango tree, hungry, sore, and in need of sleep. The sun's a little past its apex, and brilliant beams penetrate open spaces in the canopy in this hot, humid midday tropics. Alone, somewhere in the island's forest reserve, I ask myself, which way is north? I'm free, but not really free since my kidnapping. I have no money, my cell phone is smashed, but I'm too tired to go on just now. My ankle is probably broken. I tripped on a buttressed root of a silk cotton tree when they told me to run. I'm thinking, my God, am I going to remain Black for the rest of my life? If I get out of here, I dare not show up in my home neighborhood. It's a gated community in the affluent part of Rio Blanco, the capital of my island, Wawaru. It's a former British colony in the Caribbean. You see, I'd be beaten up by Cedric and the guys from the Enterprise Club, the Enterprise White Men's Club, a club of which I'm the president. Normally, we would beat up a black if found in our neighborhood, and then and only then ask questions. Even today, in the 21st century, the races here are separated on color, a pigmentocracy, if you will. It is as it should be. It has been so since the days of British rule, and the whites have enjoyed absolute privilege. And why not? We are the primary race, after all, genetically wired to rule. My family have lived on this island for 3 generations. It's a large island. Transportation is still slow because the roads are narrow and potholed as they were during British colonial rule some 50 years ago. It would take 2 hours to travel 15 miles by taxi. One would have to navigate many a village and dodge farm animals let loose to wander. Traffic would stop for the ever-present crowds mingling and playing on the roads. My dad is a minister in the government, the only white in parliament. He is the Minister of Finance. Even though most blacks make up those sitting in government and theoretically have the power, it is so only on paper because the whites own most of the property, businesses, and plantations. The blacks in government are controlled by the gentry, the whites. We whites enjoy all the power, educational opportunities, and privileges on the island. And from time to time, when we were toddlers, we were schooled directly and indirectly in the art of subjugating others. Our maids, cleaners, chauffeurs, groundskeepers, cooks, and babysitters have either been Africans, East Indians, Chinese, or Middle Eastern. Of course, a pigmentocracy dictates the higher positions go to lighter skins. So one would never find Chinese laborers. My dad, for instance, has a Syrian driver. My mom, Mary, though, is a bit of a sap when it involves dealings with non-whites. She is known to be benevolent towards our help and their families in the village. They like her. She is the chemistry teacher in the high school I attended, and she cajoled me into attending the public school where I had to share the same classes with coolies and blacks. But we of the White Enterprise White Men's Club called the East Indian students coolies. They didn't like it and would batter us if we were found alone on the playground. But my mom would angrily curb name-calling if she was within earshot. I was made to sit next to Patrick Clark in my mom's chemistry class in high school. He once bloodied my nose when I called him the N-word. He was bright, and he consistently scored the highest chemistry marks. For some reason, my mom put us together for the whole term. I believe her motive was to get me to experience learning from a black and prove that essentially we share the same aspirations and ambitions. It didn't work. Patrick despised me, for good reason, I might add. What angered me was that my mom seemed to favor him. In grade 12, we had to use silver nitrate in an experiment. We were warned to avoid getting the solution on our skin. It was the same chemical that went into making black and white photographic paper. Maybe that's where the Killer Bees is a gang headed by this Patrick Clark. Maybe that's where the Killer Bees got the idea. Patrick's job was to sort out all the chemicals in the storeroom. So I'll just jump ahead. You see this McQueen guy, this white supremacist, he got captured by Patrick's gang, and they're taking him into the forest. And when they grabbed him, this is where I will continue. 9 guys surrounded me, armed, one with a pistol, the others presaging ill fortune with an assortment of knives and axes. It was futile to struggle. It was futile to struggle, so I complied. I knew that my reputation as a white supremacist was known all over the island. This could be my last day on earth, I surmised. They tied my hands and my ankles onto a fat 15-foot bamboo pole, and I was carried like a hunted dead deer, 4 guys in front and 4 behind. And I was strung off the bamboo pole, dangling upside down and jerking with every jump and trip as they traversed the uneven forest floor. We eventually got into a clearing. There were 10 mud huts placed in a precise geometric pattern. The thatched roofs were meticulously trimmed. The surroundings were clean and hedges were well manicured. There were no seniors. The community was made up of older teens and guys and girls in their early 20s, comprising of an assortment of blacks, coolies, and a few Chinese. It was really a hideout from which Patrick's gang, the Killer Bees, operated. The gang all seemed to be well organized, and I noticed there was a rigid hierarchy operating with military precision and discipline. Anson commanded, "Put him in the guest hut." It was a well-reinforced hut which served as a detention center, a prison, though there were no doors. Where could I run? It was deep, thick jungle out there. They immediately set about prepping me for the operation. My immediate handler whispered, "Oh my God, I always considered myself brave and tough, but torture? I thought I was scared to tears for the first time. I hate pain. I know I wouldn't survive torture." Anyway, I was left alone in the quiet of my open confinement. An armed guard stood at the doorway. 1 hour later, a girl, no more than 15, came in carrying a tray. "Here, eat this," she said, without any empathy or other emotion, as she gave me water and a ham sandwich. It was hot and humid in the encampment. Sweat bathed me from head to toe. The sun was bright, and the oppressive heat restricted our movement in the camp. No sooner I had finished the water and the sandwich, 2 women and 2 guys walked in. The oldest, a woman about 25, whom they called Julie, said, "Take off your clothes." "You gotta be kidding," I yelled, laughing with an air of superiority. I hadn't noticed his presence, but Jimmy was standing beside me, snapped the crack of a bullwhip on my back. I dropped to my knees with pain. Okay, please don't hit me again." And with that, I removed my clothes and stood helplessly, awaiting further instructions. "And your shorts too," Julie said. I hesitated for a moment, then I spat in her face. Jimmy raised the whip, but Patrick Clark appeared in the doorway and shouted at Jimmy to desist. I immediately complied by pulling down my shorts, and there I stood stark naked, my blonde pubic hair wet with perspiration, parted to expose all of my member. The 6 in the room were not interested in my genitals, though. They were businesslike. It was obvious that they were there for some ritual, a ceremony I was afraid would be so demeaning that it would be greater than the pain of physical torture. "Sit down," Jimmy barked, and he produced a milking stool and set it down in front of me. Julie quietly approached me with a cordless hair shaver, proceeded to shave my head. It was soon a shiny dome. When she had shaved the hair off my head, she did my eyebrows and then all the hair from my skin, armpits, legs. Then, without pausing, she instructed me to stand and spread my legs, and she shaved my genital hair with the dexterity of a pre-surgical nurse. I hesitated to spread my legs further to accommodate further shaving. After I was cleanly shaven all over, save my eyelashes, I was led to a large tub of water where I stood, wondering what would come next. "Push him in," ordered Jimmy, and another slapped me on my back at the back of my head with enough force to cause me to stumble into the tub. I got a mouthful, which I immediately spat out. The liquid tasted salty and bitter, although it looked like water. "Get out, Jimmy," barked Jimmy. I stood on a crude cedar platform in the bright sunlight. The whole community stood aside, all 20 of them, unemotionally and silently watching me towel off with a black bath towel. I realized with horror that Patrick, the chemist that he was, had concocted a solution of silver nitrate and filled the tub with it. I was directed to stand in the sunlight for 2 hours, and they completed the exercise by walking me around, forcing me alternatively on my abdomen, then on my back with my legs elevated, legs spread apart, on my belly, on my back, until the sun activated the silver nitrate in all the crevices of my skin. The next morning, I got up with a start. I was black all over. Even the palms of my hands were jet black. I became frantic. I tried to wash off the color, scrubbing my skin to abrasion. The blackness was hard and fast, indelible. Patrick warned me, "Don't bother to scour your skin. It's not coming off." I looked in the mirror. The whites of my eyes and my teeth showed up whiter than they've ever been. "Oh my God, I'm black," I bawled. I was transformed into a black man, blacker than any of the others. Patrick continued, "Yes, now you're a black man. You're going to be treated like a black, especially by your friends at the Enterprise White Men's Club. The silver nitrate on your skin reacted with the sunlight and has stained your skin black." I'll stop there, but what happened was he was released, having turned black, into the forest, and later in the story, he was rescued by a man and his wife who lived in the forest with their 2 sons, who were both of African origin. And he had to live with them, and they cared for him for about a week. And what he learned in that interaction and living with these people completely changed things, his outlook. And that's how the story went on.
Okay.
Thank you, Frank. Any comments?
Well,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, he's now permanently black. No
Well,
way of going back.
No, when your skin gets stained with silver nitrate, it turns black for about 2 weeks, and then it gradually disappears.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in that 1 week period where he thought he'd never go back to being white,
Yeah.
he was thoroughly schooled by this very these people who lived in the forest and under very
Yeah.
basic circumstances, and through them he learned that he really wasn't different than any of these people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful.
So,
I get the premise behind it,
these,
but it leads me to question blackness. Is it just color? Or
Yeah.
is there?
well, yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a Canadian comedian. He's of East Indian origin, but he was born in Toronto. And he said on stage, he said, in 200 years, there'd be no black people and no white people because there's so many mixtures now. This is what we were talking about earlier. He said, everybody's going to be beige. And in fact, he said, you might find some guy from Iceland marry a girl from Cuba and they'd have ice cubes. And a guy from Holland would marry somebody from the Philippines and the kids would be jalapenos. So he is going on and on with that. The French and Greek.
Yeah. 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 So, Frank,
Yes.
I'm curious as to why you went to Saskatchewan at the age of 16. That's quite a young age to leave home.
Well, the short story is I wasn't doing well in school in Trinidad, and
Okay.
my parents thought a change. I didn't go straight to Saskatchewan. I went to Quebec, where my brother was a high
Okay.
school teacher, and
Yeah.
in fact, I still wasn't doing well there academically, and
Yeah.
then the principal told my brother, this boy has no academic potential. But anyway, some lightning struck and I did well in the end. And so I went
Yeah.
on to the University of Saskatchewan, after which I was a high school teacher in chemistry, and then after
Yeah.
that, the medical school. And in fact,
Yeah.
the same teacher who said this boy has no academic potential, he was my patient one time in my family practice in Alberta. But he was
Yeah.
right at the time because I wasn't really doing well.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's how I ended up in Saskatchewan.
But isn't it like way out west?
It's way
Very
behind.
cold?
Middle of
According
the
to Heather,
country.
it's behind God's back. It's true, yeah.
Yeah, my
A
goodness.
normal winter day is minus 42.
Yeah.
So
And you remained there. You never wanted to move to Vancouver or
well,
Toronto.
I started teaching high school in Saskatchewan and then moved to Alberta. Moved to
Okay.
British Columbia. And after 4 years of teaching school, I was accepted to medical school in UWI. So we moved to Jamaica and then Barbados and
Yeah.
so on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was still a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. That's why I was eligible to apply for medical school in UWI.
Yeah. 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 And you didn't lose your Caribbean accent at all.
I don't think you can lose that really. Because here, if you hear somebody speak one sentence, you'd say, oh, yeah, he's from Barbados, or he's from Trinidad, or he's
Yeah.
from Jamaica. In fact, when I was a teacher, the kids used to mimic my accent. It was funny to listen to them.
Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Frank. It was nice getting that from you.
Maybe at another time I'll
Yes.
read the last part to find out what happened to this
Yeah.
forest.
Yes, what
It's
happened to him in the forest?
yeah, it's a
Daniela,
very
you had a comment?
quite an interesting story. Yeah.
Jenny Lynn, you had a comment?
Well, not really, but I was quite intrigued by the story, so I want to hear more. I want to hear what happened next another time.
Alrighty, so I'm
It's
gonna
a
go.
good psychological experiment.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, actually, back in the 60s, there was an American journalist who,
Mhm.
I don't know how he did it, but he turned himself black and to experience the southern United States as a black
Right,
person.
right.
And the book was called Black Like Me.
Oh, I heard of that,
Yeah.
actually. Oh. Hmm.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna go ahead and highlight myself and share with you my 2 poems that I wrote. So the first one isn't on prompt, but the second one is the prompt. Fingers stained red, reaching for hope, dirtied for betterment, clinging to a promise, a soul voice can change course. If wind from a butterfly wings matter, then I matter too. Some positions are political, and it is hard to ignore politics when it may mean work in the morning. Stand and pray, place firmly, yet be gentle, so it isn't discarded. Take a picture and post, so the world knows, so you remember. Wash your fingers, rubbing out the red. Try rubbing alcohol and warm soap water. Tomorrow, solitary voices will become one. Red fingers will clasp, and the lucky will wake make coffee, have breakfast, and face time after time. So that's my first piece. And my second piece is what the prompt was. What if no one votes? How long can they make promises? How long can they promise water only to tell us to drink tears before we lay rigid and still? How much blood must seep into the soil before nothing grows? Before we sit with dirty nails and empty stomachs? How much change that remains the same can a nation tolerate? I don't know if you guys are hearing that.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
My entire house is shaking. All right, so a music truck just passed by.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I'll start over with this one.
Yeah.
Go.
Can you
I
repeat
don't know
it?
what it's called. Like elections are over, so I don't know what they're celebrating or promoting, but all my windows are shaking. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. How long can they promise water, only to tell us to drink tears before we lay rigid and still? How much blood must seep into the soil before nothing grows? Before we sit with dirty nails and empty stomachs? How much change that remains the same can a nation tolerate before we remain silent and refuse to participate in this game? Until the board is reset, the rules are agreed, and the players all return to the start. So that's that's my two pieces. All right,
Okay.
I'll open the floor for any comments.
Yeah.
Gosha, like you're taking lessons from Kamta girl.
Mhm.
All right, and
It's
if
wonderful,
there are no
Gosha.
comments,
Wonderful. Yeah.
thanks, Arlene.
Imagery, I mean, those are very strong images that you've laid down there. It's very good. Thank you.
Yeah, because
Especially the first couple of lines, I think you said you asked for water, but they said to drink tears.
Yes,
Really good, great imagery there.
powerful, powerful.
yeah,
Yeah. But how,
healthy.
how do you connect it to the theme? In my mind, I was trying to connect the poem to the theme if no one voted.
Oh, when I said they only to tell us to drink tears before we lay rigid and still, and then at the can how much change can remain the same can a nation tolerate before we remain silent and refuse to participate in this game?
Yeah.
So those were
Okay.
the elements. I was trying to show that no one voted.
Okay.
So we just, decided not to participate in the elections, but
Yeah.
happily everyone, well, some people participated. But it just seems like what made me think of the whole non-voting theme was that I kept, of course, during elections, you talk to different people about the election process, and everyone kept saying the same thing, basically, well, they're all crooks. So, well, no matter who's in power, we still have crime, we still have certain elements, challenges. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. All right.
But Gosha, I just want to say your first piece, because I think what I got from it was there's an image of hands coming, the dipping of the fingers in the red and all that, but hands coming together. And I wonder, do hands really come together sometimes? Sometimes they don't, and so I was just it struck me that. I mean, I think that's hopeful, but there is so much neighbor not talking to neighbor, friend not talking to friend, and sometimes it's not a coming together. So I'm just,
I think that goes back to the question you emailed me. It's actually two pieces. So the first piece was the red hands and hands coming together. And then the other piece was about no one voting. And I had to write two because I felt like the no one voting was so just sad, and hopeless that I wanted to write the second one to make it well again, I guess. So the one I read first was about each voice basically can make change, and there is hope and redemption, and we will progress and move forward, even in an imperfect system.
And that's wonderful. I mean, I love both of them. I thought that they were both very powerful, and your imagery was really powerful. I guess I'm going, besides what you have said, I mean, it's like, say, God, that it's so hopeful. Those poems, even the last one, I mean, there's so much hope there. But I think maybe because I live where I live, it feels for some people so frightening. And so you sort of kind of think, well, where is, there is hope. Yes, people are out there grabbing, showing their flags and showing their signs. But I just think that sometimes it's because and I bring it down to like family not talking to family, friend not talking to friend, of how in all over the world that they're so divisive and so many divisions. So I want to cling to your hope. I think that's what it is. I want to cling to your hope.
Well, your question to me was, how do we heal after a divisive election and the impact on us as writers regarding what we write? Honestly, I feel other people can certainly jump in, but I feel like in Trinidad, it was a party won, and a lot of people just said, okay, let's see where this goes, and many of the other politicians came out and wished them the best. We had the UNC, which was the winning party, called for recounts in certain areas. So there wasn't anyone disputing the election. I think and at least I haven't read or heard anything negative. Of course, there's the Facebook trolls, but I think Trinidadians, for the most part, from what my small bubble, has been pretty positive. Mutilal, what about you? And Pinal, how has the atmosphere been? You're muted.
Yes, I live in Kamla's constituency. So over here there was nothing, but on the whole, I don't know. But for the first time, I really had little interest in this election and how it went and how it was supposed to go. I had little interest, and for the first time in all my life, I don't know. First time I was so apathetic. I don't know why. Maybe it's because at my age I feel, well, they can't do me anything either way.
Yeah. But I saw a lot
at
of
this
people
age,
on Facebook
I
were
don't
posting
really,
their
they have
favorites.
nothing to look forward to because nothing, they wouldn't increase my pension.
You still have to get up and go and look for food like those two vagrants.
I think.
But a lot of people were posting on Facebook. I'm gonna ask Heather to read Kevin Gerard Hussein had posted something on Facebook as well that I thought was fitting to our theme. And so I asked Heather if she would be willing to read it for us, because I thought it was really provocative. And
It is actually, I kind of scanned it and I thought it's kind of the same message I gave in my piece in a comic way. So here we go. Trinidad has always harbored a sort of restless Jumbie. We may not always be ready to admit it, but in many of us is a quiet yet persistent defiance that runs like silk beneath its cultural rivers. Its moderately low power distance index, a measure of society's tolerance for unequal distributions of authority, speaks to this capacity for soft rebellion. If we kneel to each other, we can only be fooled into doing it for so long. We only do it if authority sings to the register that people understand. You would know how people make you feel when they always give you that internal murmur of, them feel they could advantage me. It is not that we do not take authority well. We do not take unearned authority well. Once we begin to understand it is unearned, the siren flashes wanting to escape traffic, the judge that automatically gets to the front of the passport office line, a junior minister who blocks a road for a wedding, the education officer who has forgotten the smell of a classroom. Authority should be earned the way calluses are earned, through toil, through proximity, through shared hardship. Anything else feels foreign, sterile, imported in a crate stamped for display only. Historically, the island has never shied away from the challenging grip of power, from the water riots to the Black Power Revolution of 1970. In the modern Trinidadian psyche, leadership is not a birthright, it is a contract. And when that contract is breached, when leaders forget the feel of the dirt on the boots, the people, rather than burning the palace, will instead wish it empty. The words spoken, Trinidadians need to travel more to learn that Trinidad is nice. Trinidadians need to stop eating so much macaroni pie and going to movie town 3 times a week. Trinidadians need to learn how to use a coal pot and ride bicycles to work. Trinidadians need to start praying more to stop crime. Trinidadians need to stop asking me questions at press conferences. Trinidadians need to realize these things happen all over the world. Count your murdered, you personally, you who are not at war, are not engaged in sordid affairs, are only working to pursue happiness. Count them. Those you spoke to maybe a week or a month or a year ago, only for them now to be snuffed out by another. What is the number? Count it again. Now count your missing, your raped. Is that the normal number for people around the world? Governance as quarantine, distant, antiseptic, and cold. We may not immediately know it, but we will feel it somewhere. That authority as family heirloom, as inheritance, as primogeniture simply does not feel right. A low voter turnout does not necessarily mean low voter participation. Not a single constituency crossed the 10,000 mark for the incumbent. Absence, too, can be a form of protest. That sometimes the truest rebellion is to let the edifice crumble under its own irrelevance. On election day, the silence was not apathy, it was refusal. Voter turnout plummeted, not from laziness, but from deliberate weighted silence. A hush that said, "We are not yours to command." The people withdrew, not just their votes, but their belief. The rejection via absence was not only political, it was philosophical. A reminder etched in the collective marrow of the country. Power that does not listen will not last here. In the Caribbean sun, even the tallest towers can be reduced to shadow if no one chooses to look up. Trinidadians sent their message, ancient and enduring. Leadership must kneel before it stands. all those with coming responsibilities would do well to keep this in mind as well. If you do not represent us, you will not represent us. Very good, Gershia. Very on point.
Yes, that's Kevin's words. His Facebook post is public, so if you want to go and read it or follow him
Okay.
on Facebook.
What's his name again? His
Kevin
last name?
Gerard Hussein.
Okay.
Yes, he wrote Hungry Ghosts.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
I love
Okay.
his status messages because it almost feels like he's writing an editorial or something. It's always
So I have a question. Was there low turnout? Was there a low voter turnout?
well, it's decreased, not low necessarily, but decreased from previous years.
Okay. Well, that's a shame. Yeah.
Is it because the elections were called very quickly and people didn't have time to get excited enough to go and vote, or what?
Mhm.
I can't say, probably. Perhaps I know a lot of people I've spoken to just basically they felt like they didn't have good choices
Right.
either way.
Yes.
So
Who we will vote for? It's
Yeah.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
so
Mhm.
I think some people just and that I live a very small life in a small world. So by no means am I speaking for the entire country. But it would be nice for a poll or something to be done by perhaps one of the newspaper houses to look into that,
Yeah.
to revitalize the democratic process. All right.
Well,
I just want to say one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Altira.
no, I was just going to say that here in Switzerland, we vote on something every 2 months. We get ballots to vote on something. And sometimes it does get a bit tiring after a while. You said, not again. What are we voting on this time? So, but yeah, I mean, people go out, they go out and vote, but sometimes it gets, yeah, like every 2 months it feels like it's too much, too much democracy. But then it's the way that it works here, you know.
This. I mean, I've never voted in Trinidad. I mean, I left when I was 14, and I mean, I haven't followed all of the what is going on in the political parties and stuff like that. But one of the things I must say is that I felt really proud that here are three women, a prime minister, an opposition leader, and a president that's running this government. Surely, I thought that is so fantastic because there are some places where they will burn down the house
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
elect a woman, and God forbid she's Black. All right. So I must say that I feel really proud when I saw that. I don't know very much about what's going on, but I wish them so much luck, and I hope that they can turn around Trinidad and certainly deal with the crime that's going on there and the crime that is like to women. To I mean to everybody, but what's going on towards women, it is absolutely shameful. I've said my piece. Anyway.
Well, this isn't our first time having a woman prime minister, though. We've had her in the past, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Arlene, where do you live? I assume that you lived in Trinidad, so now I'm curious.
No, okay. Well, when I left Trinidad at 14, I moved to New York.
Oh,
My
okay.
mom my mom was already here, so I moved with all of my sisters. Two of my sisters were in England, and then we all sort of got together here. And I've lived in New York for many, many years. I moved here I'm in Florida right now, in a little place called Sebastian, Florida. And I moved
Yeah.
And because my mom was here and some of my sisters, and my mom died like a month after I moved here, so that was sort of sad. But I'm here, and I go to New York as as often as I can, and so I'm here. So I mean, it's fine, but I mean, I'm looking at what's going on, and
Mhm.
and how some of my writer friends, I mean, how they
Yeah.
what are they going to write about? Are they going to be scared about saying certain things? And so that's why I'm always concerned about how,
Yeah.
how we process fear, and how we cannot be afraid. This is the time to write, as Toni
Yeah.
Morrison.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, I'm very much connected to Trinidad. My husband is Trinidadian. I mean, I don't particularly have any more of my family there, but my husband's family. But also,
Yeah.
I see myself as a Trini. No matter what, I'm a Trinidadian. I mean, so,
Yeah.
and I care about what's going on there. I care
Yeah.
much what's going on
Mhm.
there, and I hope to God that this island is turned around. That there's an opportunity here, and let's see what happens. So.
Well,
For asking.
let the women surprise us.
All right. And with that, it is 3:04. Nutilal, how long is your piece?
Well, it should be about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. I don't know.
Okay. So we will end with Mutilal. He's our last reader for the day.
Okay,
Mutilal,
here
the
goes.
floor is all
Yeah.
yours.
Okay, so I don't know if you know highlight me. Okay, this piece was written a little while ago for the 2020 elections, but I think it's still relevant. It's called A Maximan Reflex. You see me? I love politics. We should have elections every month. Well, I'm happy. You say we're having the big one this year, general elections. I'm so glad. I sell my small maxi and buy a big one. I gain plenty work and I do discriminate. I take in work from everybody, PNM, UNC, ILP, Michaela Party. I just tell them that I will put up my own sign on the bus for myself. I don't want to stick up sign on my maxi. That hard to take out when I had to do a job for a next party. So I make my own sign and banners with cloth that I could hang up. I have sign for every party. So one day my boss is UNC. Next day COP. Next day PNM. Next day ILP. And next day for the Tobago party. Look, for the last THA election, I even carry my bus down Tobago for 2 months and I make real money. One thing though, I find them Tobago people that leave your vehicle more clean than Trinidad people. I have yellow shirt, red shirt, white shirt, green shirt, so I always blending in all the party. Why this new party? I think they call them Third Force, like with Louis Lee Singh and Timothy Hammersmith and them. I don't know what color shirt to buy. All I know that all of them is a set up big shot. I see most of them wearing suit and tie and thing. I did try to get some work from them, but they're not interested. So besides, it looked like most of them supporters ain't go want to ride Maxi. Them had their own transport. If you see BMW, Mercedes, Audi, and Range Rover pack up by them office. It's a funny thing. Sometimes it's the same people I just see going to PNM, UNC, COP, ILP, and Michaela part meeting. People good we, them as members of all the parties. Me, I don't say nothing, and them don't say nothing. As long as I get paid, I happy. And the pay good, Look, it's $800 the UNC man give me to bring this trip from Pinal to Harris Promenade and back. I hear how the MP office in Pinal gave 1,000 for the trip, but I don't mind. Everybody had to live, eh? And if he takes something, we're happy. Boy, I used to expect to hear political talk in the maxi, but not so now. It's like excursion they go in. They singing, they drinking, they dancing. Man tackling woman, woman tackling man. And sometimes they tackling each other. And if you see cooler and food in basket, hey, drive, you go take a carrot? Nah, boy, I don't drink when I'm driving. But how about a chicken roti or you want goat? Well, you see me, every time I take a job, my belly full. You see this little cooler here? I just put something in it to carry home for the madam. It's the time when I just take a trip from Pinal to Port of Spain that does be real fun. First to begin, the price real good. It's $3,500 they just pay. I know how much the organizer does keep for himself. It does have people who never travel farther than San Fernando. But them is the first one to board the maxi when we go in Port of Spain. Then is to see food and drinks. I ain't had them contractors who will supply them things. Also, I hear people that get paid to go meeting. Maybe that is why I've seen so much of the same people attending different meetings. And not only that, sometimes they just ask me to stop in the road to buy oysters and more drinks. I hear they just get money to spend too. But sometimes I just feel shame when coming back in the night and they just ask me to stop in the highway because them woman want to pee after all them beers. I mean to say, I just walk north south and the other drivers go know is my maxing. What do you mean by what did they say in the meeting? I don't mean here. I just drop all the passengers and tell them where to meet me afterwards. Look, today I drop them on the promenade and I park nearby Naparima Bowl and taking a good sleep. And the party have we just call them street captain. They go rounds up everybody. And when it's time to go, they go call me when they're ready. Boy, I really like working for them political parties for election. Next week, I'm buying a loudspeaker and using my wife to make the announcement. As the thing heat up, they go have more demand for loudspeaker in the villages. And it's easy money. They give you a tape. You don't even have to talk. You only play the tape. This is the voice of the PNM, UNC, COP, ILP, Michaela, reminding you to vote for this or that party. As I say, don't even have to talk. What is the best part of this thing? Well, I can't fix the money, but it's them long trip where does have benefit. You see, when you leave Port of Spain after meeting, sometimes you reach Pinal all 3 o'clock in the morning. And it always has some young thing who want to wait till the maxi till morning clear before going home. Well, me, I responsible. I must keep company. I must keep she company till the morning. Look, again we call now. I better go up and pick up my trip on the promenade. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutilal. Just a reminder, there's a business in everything. Business and politics as well. Any comments before we close? All right, I thought that was a nice humorous piece to close on. Thank everyone for sharing. Jenny Lynn, thank you again for attending. I hope we'll see you again soon.
Yes,
Arlene, Arlene, Heather, Frank, Cynthia, Althea, thank you so much for reading.
Good night.
And June, thank you for joining us as well. Bye. Have a good night. Well, good afternoon and good night, Althea.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.